Hi there, welcome. I'm Stacey Wilson-Hunt from New York Magazine, Hollywood editor here in Los Angeles. What did you think of the film? Isn't that great? So great. Without further ado, let me welcome to the stage Viggo Mortensen. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for coming out on a Sunday afternoon to see our movie. Appreciate it.
So in reviewing everything you've accomplished in, I guess, 30 years plus as an actor, I was curious what you think this film represents to you in terms of what you're looking for in roles now. Is this film at all emblematic of sort of the ideal project to throw yourself into, and why?
I don't have a specific idea that I'm looking for a particular kind of role or a series of roles or a series of directors, series of movies, genres, anything like that. When I read scripts, I mean, obviously when I first started, like anybody here who's an actor, you know, you're just lucky to get experience. You're just looking to learn something. You're looking to figure out a way to get a job, any job, and then whether you're on a TV set or a movie set or on a stage doing a play, it doesn't matter how much you've studied and how well you've prepared to do that job, your knees are going to be shaking, there's so many distractions that come with that adrenaline and that fear, you know, once you're in front of an audience or in front of a camera crew and a camera, that everything that seemed to work so well, you know, in the other room or at home or in rehearsals, it goes out the window. And until you master that, then it's hard to do a good job. It's hard to really listen to people, to the director and all that, and properly. But then once you get going, you start working a little bit. I've always looked for stories that I wanted to see in the movie theater, if we're talking about movies. I read this script, and I've been around long enough, and I realized it's one of the best things I'd read in a long time. Such a well-written story, constantly surprising as I was reading it. I thought it was one thing, and I was wrong, and then I thought it was something else, and I was wrong. I thought the grandparents would be a certain way when I met them, and I was wrong. It's very well balanced, and it's, all the kids are individuals, they're all quite different. I have to say that when I met Matt Ross, the director and writer, and also a very good actor, as you probably know, I said, this is a great script. It's a really near-perfect blueprint for a story. But I don't know how you can make a movie as good as the script unless you find 6 genius kids to start with, or young actors. And he said, well, we'll try, you know. And I was nervous about that. Then when I got to the point, I know I'm not really answering your question. I'll try to come back to it somehow.
I'm just here to listen too, so feel free.
But I'll finish about these kids. Fortunately, he included me in the process of the final auditions, you know, the final candidates for each of the kids' roles. And then I realized that they were all talented and that they would all be great in their roles, whoever he picked. And then I got a little more nervous because I thought, well, now I'm going to have to be up to their level. No, but it's good. It's good to have that fear. You know, just when I'd sort of gotten over a lot of, worked out a lot of things, I thought at least I would be ready. Then I saw them and I said, well, on the one hand, I'm glad they're so good, but on the other hand, I didn't expect them to be that good. So I got my work cut out for me, and that's good. That's good. And it's rare. It's rare that a movie turns out as well as the script, especially when the script is so complex and so well written. Emotional journey is so beautiful, but it is, and a lot. I have to say, I will go to your question. I want to just say, name Jeannie McCarthy, who cast this movie. She really, I would ask you to give her a round of applause because she did an amazing job. What am I looking for? I don't know. I'm looking for stories that I'd like to go see, really. When I read this script, as happens whenever, and it's not that often, that I read a truly wonderful piece of material, I think, well, I can't wait to see this. I mean, whether I'm in it or not, you know. So it is true that this role, in some way, combined many things that I like as challenges as an actor. There's an emotional journey that there's several transitions, some of them subtle, some of them less. Just the way the character thinks, he has to change. He has to change, or he's not going to be able to be the father he wants to be the person he wants to be. And I love that challenge in any role, no matter what the setting is. But I don't really look for. I just hope I find that thing I'd like to go see, really.
And you mentioned Matt Ross, who's quite an excellent actor. He's on Silicon Valley and Big Love and numerous other things. And I'd love to know, what are the distinct differences you can sense being directed by someone who also acts? Because I'm sure a lot of people here do both. And how does it make your job easier? And are there shortcuts? And are there different things that he does on set as a director that make your job easier?
It can be really helpful, but it's not necessarily true. I mean, you don't have to be a really great actor to be a good director of actors. Matt Ross happens to be a really good actor and a really good director of actors. The main ingredient, I think, for being able to be particularly helpful to actors or put them at ease and help them give good performances, and I haven't seen anybody do a better job of that than Matt Ross, in terms of going the extra mile every day to make sure everybody was comfortable, not just the kids, and that it felt like fun, that it was play, even if inside, I mean, that's how good an actor he is inside. He was probably, you know, ready to curdle up and die.
This is his first film, right? Your first
No,
feature?
it's his second full
second.
length. His first was less ambitious and was focused on two characters, called 28 Hotel Rooms. Good movie, but this is much more ambitious. I mean, we're talking about an independent movie where we're changing location almost every day. You have a lot of child actors who have limited working hours legally, and you're shooting outdoors a lot of the time. So it was challenging for any director, even a seasoned one. And but he was great at creating the illusion that we had, which is like a magic trick, you know, or good acting, that we had lots of time and it was just fun, and don't worry, nothing to stress about. And inside, I think he was, I mean, he told me later, he says, yeah, I was like about to shoot myself a couple times. You know, Charlie, get down from that tree, and Viggo, what are you doing over there, you know, and, yeah. He was amazing. But I think the main ingredient is to be the kind of actor, when you work as an actor, that is interested in what other actors are doing, you know. In other words, if you're the kind of actor, and there are some excellent ones, award-winning, stunning, virtuoso actors and actresses who prepare their work diligently before they come in, and when they come in, they kind of stick to their plan, and it could be very detailed. It could be on a particular line. A tear will roll out of the left or right eye, and, you know, they know. No, I mean, really, there's people that really work that way, and every single move is planned out, and they stick to it. And it can be impressive to watch, but in terms of playing with them, they're expecting other people to adapt to what they've prepared. And I mean, I can understand, you know, just out of nerves, you want to be ready, but that kind of actor doesn't really show that much interest in what the other actors are doing, you know, consequently. And so they're probably not necessarily going to be great directors of actors. They might be, but they would have to change their point of view about other actors, I think. Now, actors like Matt Ross, who obviously prepares diligently when he works as an actor, and then comes into play, and let's see what other people do, they can be really helpful, because they've always had a history of being interested. You know, they're the way I look at it, I think, is how Matt looks at it probably, that half of what you do, no matter how well prepared you are, is based on reacting. I mean, good acting is based on good reactions to your environment, to not only your director and your environment, but specifically to your acting partners, you know. So he was really helpful.
And I'm curious, what or who inspired you to act initially? Did you have someone in your family who was a role model in terms of being an artist? Or what awoke in you, I guess, this spark to take on this difficult life?
Probably, you know, subconsciously, my mother from a very early age. I mean, she used to take me to the movies. I mean, you know, grown-up movies like when I was very little. I'm talking like a toddler, really, and 3 and 4 and 5 years old. You know, Lawrence of Arabia and Dr. Zhivago. I mean, and I loved going because she was so into it. And then in the intermission, we'd talk, and those sort of long movies that had intermissions. All kinds of movies, and she had a real. There was something now that I look back at it. She was always talking about the people and the relationships of the characters. You know, she was talking like an actress about the movies all the time, I suppose. And she had a real love of movies always. And she was the one when I first decided to try it. It didn't occur to me to try it until I was, for an actor, relatively. You know, I'm pretty old for an actor. I mean, I was 22, 23, and I thought, well, I suddenly made a click. You know, I was working, selling tickets and popcorn in a revival movie theater, and I was seeing different movies, European movies, movies from the 30s and 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and so on. And I just started seeing certain performances, certain movies where it wasn't just, do I like the story, or do I think it's a good adaptation of a novel? Was I moved? It was a question started popping up inside me, which was, how do they do it? What's the trick? How is it that I feel so strongly about this? Or why am I crying? I'm sitting in a movie theater. Or why is it that I walk outside and I'm shocked that I'm in Manhattan and not in the Sahara Desert? Or, you know, and it's daytime. It's not winter. You know, I don't know. And I just wondered, what's the trick? So it was something I wanted to try. I tried it quite late. And the first teacher I had, it was a man named Warren Robertson in New York City. It was a sort of scene study and exercise classes and so forth. And I didn't really know anything. I hadn't had any kind of acting formation, so I didn't even know what I was doing. I actually I looked in the yellow pages. I said, well, I want to try out for a play. I really looked, and I found this thing that said Actors Repertory Theater. I thought, that sounds like, yeah, they must do lots of plays and it's with actors. So I called them on the phone and I said, I want to try out. What are you guys doing right now? And they go, well, you want to audition for the workshop? And I go, yeah. What's the thing? What's the story I should prepare? And they said, well, just come in, you know, Monday at 8 o'clock or whatever, and bring 2 pieces. And I go, 2 pieces of what? And I mean, it's a miracle they even let me come in. 2 texts, memorized texts. And I said, oh, like a story, like a monologue, 2 monologues. I go, oh, okay, great. So I still wasn't sure, but I was embarrassed to ask more questions. I was just glad So I went in. I think I prepared. I cobbled together dialogue of a character from a Karen Blixen story. Isak Dinesen, the Danish writer, the woman that Meryl Streep played in Out of Africa. And there's a story that she wrote that features. He's basically Jack the Ripper, and it's things he was saying. So I just took all that together, wrote it down on a piece of paper, and then learned that. And then for some reason, an Irish song, a poem. Which I sang that, and I did the Jack the Ripper thing, which I'm sure they'd never heard either. And there was this silence, and I did the thing, and I didn't know enough even to be that nervous about it. I was just like, well, okay, I did my 2 pieces. And then I'm still wondering, what's the play? What are we trying out for? And they said, okay, we'll get back to you. And I go, okay, and that was that. But then a couple days later, they called. They said, "Okay, you're accepted." And I go, "Oh, that's great. It's always nice to hear that." So what are we doing? He said, "Wednesday, you come in, and it's Mondays and Wednesdays, and there's scene study and exercise class." And I go, "Class? What kind of class?" I go, "This is a workshop. It's a theater workshop." And so anyway, that's how that started. But my mother was always, even though it took me quite a while, I did many hundreds of auditions and I did quite a few small jobs before I could pay the rent, really. But it was all, my mom was always, she never, like my dad was more traditional, like, well, this is obviously not working out, and you're getting up in years, and maybe you should, have you thought of wearing a tie to one of these things you go to? I go, no, it's like I'm trying out for a serial killer who lives in the, you know, in the sewers of New York. I don't think a tie would, no, but it's always good for a job if you wear a tie. But he was constantly saying I should try something else. And my mom was like, so who's the director? I go, I don't know. Who's the other actors? And then sometimes I would know something. She goes, oh yeah, I think she was in, she was like.
She was your IMDb.
Yeah, she was like Leonard Maltin, you know, of our household. You know, she knew everything. So, yeah, my mom.
Wow.
In short.
There's a long and short version for each of these questions. I like it. And how did you get the role in Witness? Did you audition for Peter Weir? And that, I mean, that for me, that was seemed to have been your breakthrough in terms of big commercial movies. How did you land that part?
You know, I think that I didn't meet him, but I think I had met the casting director for something else. And I mean, the part was, as written, it was just a day's work. It was this funeral that's at the beginning of the movie, if you remember the movie Witness. And there's some Amish men and boys walking through a cornfield, I guess it was, and down the dale into where the farm is, where Kelly McGillis' family lives. And it's a funeral for her husband. And that was it, just walking there. And I think I had one word in German. And that was it. And I was supposed to go back to New York. And actually, I wasn't so sure about that role. I mean, I had seen Peter Weir's movies, you know, Picnic at Hanging Rock and so forth. And Gallipoli, I particularly loved that. And that was sort of one of those movies that was shown at that revival theater where I worked. And I really loved that movie. I knew he was a good director, but the same day I was offered this day's work down in Pennsylvania. I was living in New York at the time. I was also offered a part in a production of Shakespeare in the Park for that summer. And I had no question that was the thing to do, obviously. And my representative said, well, not so fast. You know, I mean, you live in New York, and it's not that often that you have someone like Peter Weir coming through and casting. You know, usually that's going to happen in L.A., and, you know, you can do a play anytime. And I said, yeah, but it's like the whole summer, and it's with so-and-so, and Shakespeare, and that's what I like. And he said, you know, trust me, just go down and do this thing. So, okay. So I took the train down there to Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and I did that day's, where I was doing that day's work, and at lunchtime, Peter Weir came over to the table where I was sitting with some of the other, you know, actors, and he said, can I talk to you for a minute? And I said, sure. You know, I felt like maybe I'd said the thing in German wrong, or I don't know what the hell it was. It seemed like there must be something wrong because he looked very serious. And he says, what are you doing the next 6 weeks? And I said, nothing now. I was thinking, you know, thanks to this. But I said, no, I don't know, nothing. And he said, well, I think I'm just watching you, and I was looking at Alexander Goodenough, and I think I'll make you be his brother if you're willing to hang around. And I'm not sure where I'll put you in, but wherever he's there, especially when he's interacting with Kelly McGillis and Harrison Ford, you're sort of the audience's eyes, I think, watching and seeing this competition. And I can't tell you what you'll be doing, but we'll figure it out as we go along. And that's great. So I'd work once or twice a week at most, mostly just background. But that was great, and it gave me the absolute wrong idea what movie making is like, because the director was polite, there was no yelling. Work always finished on time or a little before. Everything was done really well. Professionally, the actors were well behaved and talented, generous. I was like, wow, what a great business, you know. And then it took me about another 20 years to have another experience like that. I didn't realize that was not the norm. But it was a great experience because I got to watch him, John Seale, he's a great cinematographer, watching Harrison Ford work. He did a great job in that movie, and it was a very good cast, so yeah.
And did you find yourself, I guess, getting noticed by more casting people in studios and getting more roles after that.
From that?
From that film. And also the following years. I mean, you worked fairly steadily through the 90s.
Actually, that was 84 that we shot that. The movie came out in 85. It took me a long time to get going. I mean, I didn't actually, I mean, I don't know who noticed what, but I didn't hear much about it. I mean, I eventually moved out to California, and, you know, in 85 and 86 and 87.
Did you feel like you needed to be in LA?
88 went by, and 89, and, you know, I wasn't doing very, I mean, I was working here and there once in a while. I think it was probably like 89, 90. I got a role in a Young Guns Part 2. It was a Western, and that sort of helped a bit. And then I got, I mean, I was getting jobs here and there. I worked a little TV, little, you know, small parts in movies. And the first, I mean, I did a lead in a horror movie set in a prison in Wyoming, and that was a break. Somebody had seen me in a play I did here in Los Angeles in '87, did that. And then Sean Penn cast me in Indian Runner, and that helped to some degree, but not immediately either. I mean, that came out in 1991. And
you find yourself...
It was just bit by bit. I mean, I learned by, you know, and I remember, you know, a role that was important was actually cast, she was assistant casting director, I think, Jeannie McCarthy at that time. She was involved in Crimson Tide, as a Tony Scott movie with Denzel Washington. And,
did you find yourself being, I guess, not typecast necessarily, but was there a through line for the parts that people kept wanting you for? Did they want you for kind of like bad guy parts, or was there a sense of...
At first I couldn't get auditions for those. I mean, those are the ones I wanted to try out for because they seem, you know, yeah, a little more fun, more interesting, and more of a challenge. But because of the way I looked and what they'd seen me doing, certainly Witness wasn't going to help that. They were just like, oh, sort of nice young man kind of parts, and it was really only after Indian Runner then that people were more open to me being able to play different sorts of a slightly wider range of characters, but it took a while. But you know, you learn a lot that way. I mean, I got on Crimson Tide, for example, watching Denzel Washington and Gene Hackman sparring was great, and seeing how Tony Scott worked with the actors. All these experiences add up and help you get a shorthand as far as how to be useful to the story, the movie story, and to the director. How to cut to the chase. I've always stuck with a similar approach, you know, to each job. Once I know I'm doing a job, I always ask myself, what happened before page one? You know, back to when the character was born. So I make that up for myself. It's a way to sort of keep the nerves at bay. And it's like, oh, I'm working on something, even if I haven't figured out how I'm going to play the role. I'll know who he is by the time we start, that's for sure. And then I can go in with that and really listen to other people. So I always do that. But other than that, it's, you know, as you all know, you learn by doing. You know, you can read, you can study, you can do all that, but you learn by doing, by making mistakes in a lot of cases.
And did you have any sense of how giant Lord of the Rings would be when you were filming? Because you guys were so far away, so tucked away in the beautiful far reaches of New Zealand, and because you filmed everything in succession, right? It was all filmed.
Yeah, it was kind of a messy process to some degree. I mean, it was very ambitious. Obviously, it had never been done quite like anything like that before. It was over a year straight, shooting the most of, like, the bones of all three stories, and then by the end of that process, probably the first movie, and to some degree the second, were more complete than the third one. But we kept going back, you know, after finishing that shoot, and in the 6 months before each of them came out, each year we'd go for months to New Zealand, reshoot and shoot new stuff. It was like the ratio of footage shot to footage on screen, we probably broke a record, you know, in the sense that it was so much shot and compared to what was on screen. But that was a great experience. I felt that it was unique, definitely, and the look of everything was really good. It felt like the spirit of Tolkien was being captured. But until you see the way it's edited, I do remember that they showed the first public screening of anything was like 20 minutes of the movie was shown at the 2001 Cannes Film Festival. And that was a big, success with journalists. I remember that got a lot of attention, and it was 20 minutes of footage, showing fighting and just lots of different looks, Rivendell and the caves of Moria and dwarves and all kinds of stuff, and elves running around and all of us, in the mountains, as I remember. And people really liked that, even though you couldn't tell exactly what it was going to be. It just looked great. And I remember there, talking with some of the producers were nervous. I think, well, this could be good, but, Asia, we're worried about Asia. I go, why are you worried about Asia? You go, well, they don't have a history of reading Tolkien there. It's not like in their bookstores. And I said, I don't know. I wouldn't worry about it. I mean, the value of the story is that it's universal. I mean, just take the elves. It's very samurai culture and so forth. So, I mean, I did feel like it had a chance to appeal broadly, but I think anybody that tells you that they knew it was going to be the cultural milestone and the box office success that it was is doing some rewriting of history or of the memory, because I don't think anybody knew that. No.
Did you find those films sort of shifted your sense of, or I guess others' sense of you and your fame, and did you find that suddenly maybe you were able to no longer glide through and sort of be, in the shadows, as it were?
Well, I certainly, like everybody else, I got all of a sudden a huge amount of attention. It was kind of
nerd attention too, which is the strongest kind of attention.
Yeah, and longest lasting, which is great. I thought it was great, but it does take some getting used to. It's like, until you go through something like that, you don't really know how that's gonna be. But I thought it was wonderful, the reaction that people had. It gave me opportunities. Not only was it a wonderful experience working for Peter Jackson and with all those people, that huge family, which is what we became, but it obviously, all of a sudden, movies that I would love to see, some of those, in reading scripts, some of those, it was a realistic possibility that I could be in them, some of those, that was a welcome change. So it did give me more options, and without The Lord of the Rings, obviously I wouldn't have been able to do the first movie with David Cronenberg that I did, and so, things, I'm sure there's some, and then you make them, you have to be lucky, but then you have to do something with your luck and hopefully make good choices and continue to be fortunate and be ready if something happens, but I'm sure there's some residual effect, even being able to get Captain Fantastic made, saying, okay, well, it's going to be with these kids that at the moment nobody's going to know who they are. We'll have some good, hopefully, supporting actors in some of the roles, but as far as the father, if Viggo plays it, yeah, we'll finance that, so it's probably a residual effect, and that's great. And I don't know, I can only be grateful. And I have to say that, I was talking about the kids earlier, but it's also, Frank Langella is great, and Dowd, Catherine Hahn, Steve Zahn, even Trin Miller, who was a local hire to play the mom. In the script it was written as there was no dialogue. It was just she appears once, the first time in the teepee in a dream, and he remembers, and then he wakes up and he looks and sees her will. But that's the only time she appears. She may be saying something, but you don't see it, hear it. It's MOS, and then she came in, and I remember she waited patiently because we'd been working with kids all day, and then we finished the day. It was a long day. And it's like 1 a.m. I said, okay, we'll go in the teepee and we'll do this thing. And why don't you guys, have you read the script? She goes, yeah. And I quickly realized she really had read the script, because he said, well, why don't you guys just talk? We'll record it, but it's not just so and we're not going to use a dialogue. It's just so that you guys are really doing something and talking. And all of a sudden she started talking, and then, by the end, Matt, and everybody was crying. Some of the things she was saying about the kids, it was just striking. It was amazing, and she had a great presence. Things like that happen sometimes, and it was so good that Matt said, well, I'm going to use some of that sound. I don't know what, because you guys did about 45 minutes of improvisations, but And I think she should appear again, which she then does, before we go into the church. And then I said to him, I mean, you could see her a third time. And then, we talked about this idea that, because in the script it was just the coffin, and the line where the youngest girl says, "Mommy's in here," which is beautiful, touching the coffin, that happens down the cemetery, actually happened on the bus, and they were just all like that. I said, why don't we just look at him? It would go with the family way of dealing openly and in a healthy way with death. It could be, it might be a little uncomfortable, but it could be really beautiful. And I mean, the way he shot that and directed those kids, I mean, just the kids did those things on their own, really, but there's something about, sometimes that happens in the movies where it's beyond what you could imagine. You couldn't have planned something that would sound and look and feel that good. That's one of my favorite sequences. So, things happen like that. And like I say, it's rare that a movie, that the characters are all so well written to start with, that it's so well cast, and that in the end, there's no weak links. You believe all of them, and that doesn't happen that often. I mean, as a group of actors, it's one of the most successful from script to screen experiences I've had.
We have a few audience questions I want to get to before we run out of time. This is from Chris, and Chris would like to know if you have any daily routines that you engage in to maintain your craft as an actor.
I try to observe and listen, especially to people, and try to step outside myself a little bit and see how I'm behaving. It's hard to know that always, but I just as a human being, I try to be aware of, and if I realize that the tone I've used or the way I've talked to somebody there's something wrong with it, I try to find a way to tell that person that, or ask them, did I offend you? Just to be kind of just in tune with what's going on. I think a lot of times people will say, separate not just actors but artists in general from non-artists. Children don't do this. I mean, acting with the youngest kids, it was great, and actors are sometimes, adult actors, worried about working with kids because they're probably not going to do the same thing from take to take, and sometimes it might be wildly different. And if you're the kind of actor who's, that I described, that expects other people to adapt, you can get in trouble and be very uncomfortable. But I love the surprises kids bring, and I, remembering myself as a kid and watching other kids, watching my son and other children don't think of themselves as artists and non-artists. And certainly when they're making believe, they don't need a second take, and they don't need really a director. I mean, it's wonderful. And I think that as an actor, I think the main thing is to just continue cultivating an awareness. It's like if you walk around, well, nowadays it's easy because every phone is one, but my whole life since I was maybe 13 or so, I always have had a camera of some kind around, close by. I have one in this bag. And even if you don't use it, just the idea that you might, you're looking at things in a certain way, so that, if I go down a certain block in the car or walking, and someone says, what was on that last block, I can tell them quite a few things. Whereas if I wasn't thinking about the possibility or looking at the composition or the colors or what person walked by, I probably wouldn't be able to tell you anything because I'm in my own head about stuff. So it's just, that's generally what I do. It's not like I do particular, necessarily, vocal exercises or out and out acting exercises on a daily basis. I try to cultivate an awareness. Like anything is a possibility for a story. Anything could be something I could tell you when I get to you. It's like, guess what I saw? And then it's the description that is also artistic. I mean, I think what I'm trying to say is you can walk down the street artistically. I love to go see movies, in movie theaters. I like that experience, the ritual of going in, the lights go down, and then I think we all give 10 minutes a pass for 10 minutes to any kind of movie. I mean, you've gone in, you've paid, or you've been invited, you sit down, and it could be the weirdest stuff going on. But if after 10 minutes, maybe 15, something clicks, you're like, okay, And but I think people want to be transported, and I think actors, many actors, I can't say all, I don't know. I know myself, I like to be transported. I like people to tell me stories, and I like to tell people stories. I like stories, Everything that happens is a potential story. I think that's the way kids live every second until a certain age. And then gradually they learn to somehow decide whether they are artists or not, They're no longer actors, some of them, apparently, even though they really are. It's just allowing yourself to pay attention in a particular way,
Well, sadly, we've run out of time. You've made my job very easy today, by
Can
the
you
way.
do one more quick one?
Sure.
It's my fault for
No.
get to these.
No, I'm wanting to make everyone happy, so.
You can do as many as you want. You can do them all, as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you. That's the best. Here's an interesting one. This is from Richard Gilbert Hill. It's a very cool name, by the way. With all the takes that can be shot in close-up, are you sometimes surprised by what the editor and the director choose for the final cut? And are there any examples of this? And finally, do you have any say in this process at this stage in your career? And this could be for this film or any films.
What was the first sentence?
With all the takes that can be shot for a close-up, are you sometimes surprised by what the editor and or the director choose for the actual final cut?
Well, not just for a close-up, but for any shot. And in the editing, it's often surprising, and many times pleasantly so, where a moment that you were sure would be a close-up is actually a wide shot, and you're seeing the behavior of more than one person. You see the environment, and I like that a lot. There's certain kinds of directors historically. I mean, one I can think of is Ozu, great Japanese director. He tended to shoot with the same lens all the time. And there was a certain remove, and it was almost like watching a play. And there's a certain formal quality to it, but I really like it because you're watching little mistakes at the edge of frame. I mean, not mistakes, but odd things that characters are doing. I like that. Yeah, sometimes I'm surprised. I mean, in the hands of a less aware or maybe clumsier director and or editor, sometimes I've been disappointed. I don't want to single them out, but, as an actor, it can happen that you can be disappointed that your scene has been cut, obviously, or your line, or some scene, one of your scenes, or whatever. That something wasn't chosen, or not even yours. I mean, someone else, you go, God, that was such a great moment. Why isn't that there? And, they have their reasons. I mean, they're the ones that put the painting together in the end. You're just one color.
Do you like to watch your movies?
I don't mind. I mean, some actors can't watch themselves because it just makes them feel bad.
I always think they're lying when they say that.
That they can't watch them?
Yeah,
I know. I've met some people that I think genuinely
it's too uncomfortable for them.
Yeah, I think Sandy Dennis was that way, and genuinely. And I've met a few other people, but I think it's true. I know what you mean. Some people are like, it's like saying, I don't really want attention. It's like, okay. Interesting profession you've chosen. It took me a long time to get used to it, because it's like when you first hear your voice, a recording of your voice, it sounds unusually nasal or odd, and it's the way and just like you see someone takes a snapshot of you, or you're in a family shot, and it's like, and then with years pass, you look back and go, why was I so worried? I mean, I was much younger then, and
I look pretty good.
What was I complaining about? But I think that's very human, and as an actor, it took me a little while, but I always was curious about it, because I always thought there's always room to do it a little better next time, or, so that's what they were looking for, and had no idea. Okay, because of the editing choices and so forth. As far as being, and I'm often really impressed by by good editing, good choices by directors. I think that has something to do with the fact that I'm trying to be in stories without thinking of genre or budget or anything. I'm just looking for stories that I want to see. So chances are I'm probably going to like what I see to some degree, even if it's not perfect. The idea was good, but maybe sometimes the execution isn't great, or the editing, I don't know. As far as being involved, yeah, sometimes directors will say, well, I'd like to show you some of it just to get your impression. And I'm always glad to look, because I think if someone offers you that, they're looking for not a completely objective eye, but an eye of someone who has been along as a partner in the storytelling, along on the journey, and they just want to get the feedback, and they're probably not going to ask you if they think that you're going to get all upset or start telling what to do. Sometimes it happens. I mean, Matt Ross asked me to look at a rough cut, but I didn't. It's not my place, and I wouldn't do that. Even I've produced 3 movies also, and I'll offer my opinions, but as a producer, I always felt my role was not that different from the actor. I'm trying to support the director in every way I can now that I've signed up to get that vision across, and they should do what they want to do. I can offer suggestions as a producer, and I have more rights after the movie's done as a producer. It's not just an actor that says, well, I think the poster shouldn't look this way, or in this country this is a better distributor. You can have those opinions as an actor, but they can just go, yeah, right, okay. But as a producer, that's part of your job, so I like that. But no, I don't like to meddle. I'm very happy to offer my thoughts if someone asks.
And this is from Raj. Raj would like to know, what was one of the more tricky or challenging scenes from Captain Fantastic?
On a superficial level, the rock climbing was not something I was looking.
All the kids actually climbing? Were you all actually?
No, they were. But when they got up there and they're swinging around like monkeys, I saw that even we were in a gym practicing before doing it quite a bit, and they were fearless. And I was even in the gym when I got a certain height. I didn't really like it very much. I look at rock climbing as something I admire. I think it's aesthetically beautiful. I know it's when I've done it and gotten to the top of a certain rock face, there's a sense of accomplishment and there's a total focus. It's like drawing or writing can be that way, or playing music, where you have to be so focused that you get this rush at the end of it, because or acting can be that way when it's working. When it's working, acting is the most fulfilling, greatest, inspiring job there is. When it doesn't work, it's the worst, most embarrassing, humiliating. It's just terrible. You just want to die sometimes. When it's working and everything's clicking and you're connecting with everyone, it's wonderful. But the rock climbing, I wasn't looking forward to it. But once we got up there, it was okay. And I just stayed up there basically. They climbed down to have lunch, and I said, I'm good, I'm here, I'm good. And I just stayed looking at that granite, and they said, but we can send you a sandwich up on a rope or something. And I just, yeah, that's good. So I was just really glad that the weather held and that there wasn't anything wrong with the film or something that we had to reshoot it. I was glad that was done. But overall, I think it was, in general, the most challenging aspect of it for me was interacting with the kids and working with that great script. That was not easy, but it was a pleasure always. There was some of the transitions I had to make, just his slow realization. You're playing a character that basically is the last to realize that he's on the wrong track in some ways. It's like the kids know before he does, the audience knows way before he does, and just wanting to get those transitions right, and I guess was the most challenging aspect.
Well, thank you so much for being here. I think we learned a lot, and we appreciate it.
Thank you all.
Thank you.